While to outsiders, the history of the Fremen has become inextricably tied to the planet of Arrakis, their origins have important threads which can be traced back across the galaxy. These involve a multi-millennia long diaspora of trials and tribulations dating back to ancient Terra. Guiding them along the way would be a litany of scheming entities, including the swords of the Empire, the transports of the Spacing Guild, and the whispers of the Bene Gesserit. Whether intended or not, this fateful combination of factors spawned a zealous race whose legendary history spoke of them as a chosen people on a great religious journey set to culminate in a climactic end-times battle where the true believers would ultimately find paradise. Thus were they primed on Arrakis for the arrival of House Atreides and a young boy who would be hailed as their long-awaited savior. This is the all-important story of the origins of the Fremen. With Valentine's Day coming up, we're once again going to be reminded to celebrate things which come together in a perfect match. Now for me, that means binging audiobooks and rocking it on my Raycon everyday earbuds. Recently, I've been having a blast listening to the Dune audiobook, and it's been made so much better thanks to the everyday earbuds. Couple reasons why. First and foremost is I'm very active throughout the day. I'm either cooking, cleaning, working, taking my dog out for a walk, exercising and all that. And what's really nice about these Raycon earbuds is you can see, pop them in, perfect fit. I can whip my head around. They are not going to fall out. They're nice, snug, and comfy. And in addition to that, they have a really nice noise isolation feature to keep me focused and in the zone. If I have any interruption where I really have to break the story, I can easily use the tap to pause feature to finish something and get back into the mix of things. In addition to that, I can listen to the Baron scheming all day thanks to Raycon's 8 hours of playtime and 32 hours of battery life, which makes it an awesome experience. In addition to that, you can get really good audio quality with these Raycon everyday earbuds. Compared to your usual brands, the cost is going to be way lower for awesome value there. So if you want to support the channel, grab a pair for yourself using the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/Invicta for 15% off and free shipping. Enjoy. The Fremen were descendants of the far-wandering people known as the Zensunni. Many different stories are told of their origins, even by their own members, and thus their true history is of great dispute. We can nonetheless provide one of the more robustly supported narratives catalogued in the Dune Encyclopedia. This claims that the Zensunni had originated on ancient Terra. When our story begins, the birthplace of humanity sits in relative obscurity. It has been many millennia since humanity left its cradle to make a home across the galaxy. In the intervening years, there have been countless chapters written in the history of mankind, with peaks and troughs that have spanned the golden and dark ages of successive empires. Amidst this churn, one of the peoples of Earth have found their ocean of calm. These were the Zensunni Wanderers. The group itself had originated as a splinter sect that abandoned the teachings of the so-called Third Muhammad. Soon, they would be joined by other dispossessed individuals who now found common cause in a new cult that sought to harmonize the seemingly dissonant traditions of Sunni and Zen religions. On the one hand, Sunni ways taught community, while Zen taught personhood. Sunni was rigidly traditional, while Zen was accepting of change. Sunni grasped for a savior, while Zen rejected external agents of salvation. Such inherent tension was eased by an appeal to mystery, which helped bind otherwise contradictory beliefs and encouraged a highly faith-based doctrine. In this way did Zensunnism emerge as a cult with passionate followers whose ways were inscrutably alien to their neighbors. Thus did they recede from society, rejecting any secular government which attempted to command them. Eventually, the tribes of the Zensunni left the outskirts of the settled world entirely to forge their own path across abandoned regions of the earth such as the ancient Sahara. Here they lived as wandering tribes who found new freedoms and a deepened identity. However, in 2800 AG, the imperial throne put out a levy calling for volunteers to colonize the newly rediscovered planet of Poritrin. In an unprecedented move, this burden was placed on old Terra, which had otherwise long enjoyed an exemption from such demands. This put the planetary governor, Baron Mikarol in a politically difficult position. At least until an advisor brought forth reports of an otherwise forgotten people, the Zensunni nomads. Who could object to the loss of these self-disenfranchised religious fanatics? And so, an expedient solution was found to meet the quota at no cost to Mikarol's political capital. Immediately, survey missions were sent to reconnoiter the scattered Zensunni tribes. Search parties were shocked to find their prior records had hugely underestimated the population. Efforts were thus redoubled. By the end, an exhaustive sweep of the planet revealed a total of 2.5 million Zensunni. Such a haul would more than cover the tithe, greatly pleasing the Emperor without even having to dip into the general population. Soon, armed men and ships swept down upon the enclaves. With overwhelming force, any resistance was put down. Zensunni men, women, and children were boarded onto transports en masse. Then, just as quickly as they had arrived, the colonial barges now set off for the stars. The tribes were destined for distant Poritrin, the third planet in the Epsilon Alang system. On this long voyage, the anguish of abduction was assuaged by old religious legend that the 10,000 questions of the Sunna were only to be resolved by a journey whose final answer would bring about the end of humanity's tenure in the universe. Perhaps this frightful, extraterrestrial step was but the first in a holy path leading to a prophesied salvation. Such a belief would come to lay at the heart of their culture. Truly, they were the chosen people, the Mizar. Thus, when the colonists were unceremoniously deposited on Poritrin, the Zensunni remained surprisingly calm. Inspired by hope and already inured to harsh living, they stepped off the transports with new purpose. The various tribal leaders, or naibs, now worked together to divide the machinery and resources they had been left with, before separating to settle in each of their own agreed-upon regions. The omens of prophecy were good. Each group easily found a site of their liking to settle. The planet proved welcoming, with plentiful water, a gentle climate, and a long growing season. Thanks to the resourcefulness of the Zensunni, they were able to take full advantage of this boon. Over the generations, they would come to make Poritrin theirs. Within centuries, a new civilization emerged. Now numbering in the tens of millions, the Zensunni inhabited numerous cities, settlements, and tribal lands across the planet. As such, their culture naturally evolved. Old tales of a sudden eviction from Earth were warped into a more convenient narrative of willing flight from persecution. Meanwhile, many of the nomadic traditions were shed for those more conducive to a largely sedentary lifestyle. Yet still, they clung to intense ideas of community, racial solidarity, and prophetic concepts of a great journey that would lead their chosen people through the end times cataclysm into paradise. Thus it was that when Imperial troops once again returned in 4492 to forcibly relocate the Zensunni, they largely left willingly. Only 5 standard legions were required to pacify and escort them to the awaiting hayliners. Some tried to warn the people of their true destination, but most were too blinded by superstition and beliefs in a fated journey to resist. They would learn the error of their ways shortly. Roughly half the population was shipped to the imperial prison planet of Salusa Secundus. Here, they were to serve as slaves. Under the cruel treatment of their prison society masters, in an even crueler world, they suffered greatly. Yet the pressure awakened within them the old ways of the resilient nomadic heritage. Tears were no longer shed for the harshness of the conditions or the pangs of separation. They were now solely reserved for the injustice of having been robbed of their hajra, the prophesied religious journey. Those who managed to survive clung to their faith. Unbroken by re-education, forced conversion, and massacre, the Zensunnis of Salusa Secundus endured for 10 generations. Meanwhile, the other half of the population, which had been removed from Poritrin, was shipped to Tegeuse, the 5th planet in the Kernsing star system. Conditions here were not as Edenic as their prior home, but at least proved far more hospitable than the grim conditions which had awaited their relatives on Salusa Secundus. Armed with basic supplies and left to fend for themselves, these Zensunni were set to repeat the history of Poritrin, slowly rebuilding a civilization across another, largely deserted planet. This time, however, they were not as innocent as their ancestors. In anticipation of the Empire's return, settlements were founded in far more defensible positions with close enough proximity to support one another. The people also adopted a more martial culture which prepared to rebuff interference from outsiders. A vigilant defensive stance held for centuries. Yet this mattered little when in 6049 the Sardaukar returned in force. The Zensunni put up a brave defense, but could not hope to match the ferocity of the Emperor's finest. The invasion was a brief, bloody affair which left many of the defenders dead. Those who survived were once more at the mercy of the Emperor's whims. At the time, colonial efforts called for the population of several planets, which included Hamonthep and Rossack. Thus, a new diaspora was enforced to split the Zensunni up between these disparate regions. Still, they somehow clung to their ancestral beliefs. A chant recorded from this period of migrations goes as follows: "Though our enemies scatter us far, even throughout the universe they shall never destroy us, for we are Mizr, the people, and to us have been revealed the fiqh and the ilm, which none other have seen. This remains, we remain." Unfortunately, with regards to the fate of the Hamonthep colonists, few records exist. The planet itself appears to have been destroyed for unknown reasons within 8 centuries of their arrival. All may have perished, or perhaps been further spread in an exodus to avoid the calamity. The group on Rossack fared little better. Their planet was a cold, wind-blown environment with little in the way of plant life, most of which was poisonous. Few survived the first winter, and generations would struggle to survive amidst the bleak conditions. There was, however, one silver lining. It was discovered through trial and error that consuming the right dose of a poisonous native plant elicited a delirium where a Sayadina or religious leader could peer within the minds of all the Sayadina who had come before. Thus would be born the first Reverend Mother and the rite which accompanied this transformation. Such a development had a massive effect on the Zensunni. Long bound by tradition and culture handed down preciously by mouth, they could now become one with the ways of the past. Such a powerful connection further reinforced their worldview as a chosen people on a great religious journey. Soon, these newly enlightened elders deemed that now was the time to reunite the lost tribes and embark on this trip to the Promised Land. No longer would the Zensunni be ripped apart by an uncaring Imperium. Fate would be in their own hands. Thus did the tribes of Rossack begin to pool resources and work towards securing enough funds to pay the Spacing Guild for a destination of their choice. Though the financing was slow and the negotiations tough, by 7193, a deal had been struck which would allow at least a portion of the Zensunni to be sent to the location of the Lost Ones, the descendants of the tribes which had been splintered long ago upon Salusa Secundus before making their own escape. With little hesitation, the youth of the tribe were afforded this great honor to fulfill the journey on behalf of all the people. It was with heavy hearts then that the new generation boarded the guild transports alone. Destiny awaited. However, unknown to the travelers, a grand scheme was afoot. Deeply buried records reveal that the Spacing Guild had in fact already been orchestrating a reunification of the scattered Zensunni to suit their own agenda. This involved a newly discovered planet whose fortunes would reshape the galaxy. Arrakis. Dune. It was here that a gold rush was underway to exploit the precious resource of spice. The Empire's most powerful entities were all in competition to gain the advantage. To this end, one of the many ploys by the Spacing Guild was to see the Zensunni on the planet as a useful ally. The arrangement was mutually beneficial. On the one hand, it allowed the long-persecuted group to finally make a home for themselves in perhaps the only world where they would be too difficult to dig out by the Emperor and his forces. On the other hand, the move benefited the Spacing Guild, who now had a partner on the ground to help them control the precious flow of spice. Thus it was that the Zensunni of Rossack along with their Reverend Mother, would finally be reunited with their lost brothers and sisters. To them, it appeared as a miraculous fulfillment of prophecy. No longer an aimlessly wandering people, they would now call themselves the Fremen. With the assistance of the guild, they now set about making a new home in what to outsiders appeared to be a living hellscape, but to the Fremen represented the doorstep to heaven. Conditions were brutal, but even this first generation was tough. They benefited from the communal nature of their heritage and could draw on the specific lessons learned by each tribal group's past, in addition to the revelations of their Reverend Mother. Thus did a new blend of Zensunnism emerge that was gradually adopted to the desert life of Arrakis. Native spice, for instance, replaced the poison plant of Rossack as the means by which the Reverend Mothers gained their abilities. Now, it would be supercharged by the potency of the Arrakeen drug, which would also be consumed by the Fremen, granting them extended life. The local sandworms too found themselves into a new culture, being hailed as the godlike Shai Hulud. Guiding this societal evolution would be the influence of another galactic playmaker. Here, the subtle hand of the Bene Gesserit Missionaria Protectiva seeded new beliefs and myths in the furtherance of their own schemes. The most important of these was the prophecy that one day, the Fremen would be led by a savior to take the final step in their religious journey into the end times battle for salvation. And so, the Zensunni, who had already walked this long path for millennia, awaited with patience and ever-increasing religious anticipation for such a day to come. In our next episode, we will explore the evolution and daily life of the Fremen on Arrakis during this period of waiting. In this way, may we better understand the true nature of the people who 3,000 years later would look upon the arrival of Atreides ships with whispers of the Lisan al-Gaib, the voice from the outer world, and a hope that the heir aboard could be their Mahdi, the one who would lead the people into paradise. You can catch script previews, download all our art, and participate in polls by supporting us on Patreon or YouTube memberships. A big thanks to the current supporters for funding the channel, and to the researchers, writers, and artists for making this episode possible. We couldn't have done it without this team and this community. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe for more content, and check out these other related videos. See you in the next one.